Back here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the certified Angus beef brand. Bryan Schaff here with me, as always, joined across the big table here in the studio by Chef Tony Biggs, meat scientist Diana Clark. How you guys doing?
Excellent.
Fantastic. How you guys doing?
Yeah, I can't complain.
It's a good day. You know, we live in a day and age where outrage is certainly the name of the game. And I want to be a follower this week, and I want to be outraged about something that I feel like deserves being outraged about. That being the London broil. Now, I asked this question, what is it? And I asked that knowing what the answer is, but I am outraged because we've taken the London broil and we've basically called a whole bunch of different cuts of London broil, and we've evolved this to the point that nobody actually knows what it really means. Diana, can you walk me through this?
So from my standpoint, it's morally just a thinner cut of meat, usually a tougher piece. And it's the cooking application is describing that London broil. I always like to think it's kind of like the prime rib. Prime rib is not a cut. It's the way you're cooking it. So it's the same concept, because you can get London broils from the chuck, you can get them from the flank, you can get them from the round. I've even seen people cut them from a sirloin before. You just don't know what you're getting when you say London broil.
Yeah. Tony Biggs,
Yeah, I grew up, I'm older. I'm like 30 years older than both of you. So I first found out, well, I think I am. I experienced a London broil at my dad's restaurant, which is classically known as the flank steak.
Yeah.
And the flank steak, I believe that was the original London broil. But like what Diana is talking about is, I think it's been so bastardized over the year, you don't really know which cut it is. So let's stay with the flank steak here for a moment, and just season it with salt and pepper, olive oil, some shallots, some garlic. And why do you call it broil? Because you're actually broiling the meat on top. You're turning it over. You're finishing it on top, on the bottom. And then the most important thing about the flank steak is you cut it against the grain, and then with your knife, you are kind of on an angle, like a 90-degree angle, and you're making these beautiful slices. Mm-hmm. And that's, to me, is the true London broil.
Yeah.
I agree with
But if
that.
you go into a retailer, a butcher shop, and you see something that's a London broil, that's not a flank steak.
No, not anymore. Basically, the flank steak got so popular and rose in price, and usually it was kind of a cheaper cut, an underutilized cut, so that's why you'd find it way more a flank steak as a London broil. But now, since it's not at that price point that customers are looking for, they've turned to other items. And instead of trying to explain what these items are, it's let's just give it the same name and pretend like no one will notice.
Yeah.
And it's okay. But it just adds more confusion.
Right? It's the original, when the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air swapped out Aunt Viv with a new actress, and
You're
like
like,
nobody would notice. Like, come on, guys.
Totally can
Right?
tell.
You're trekking with me, right?
And it's not from London, where everybody thinks it is. It's I love English. I love the British culture, but it's not from London. It probably started in Philadelphia someplace at a steakhouse.
But it sounds fancy, which leads me in. The London broil, to me, is just the biggest triggering example that I can think of what we want to tear into today. And it is the idea of cut names are real confusing, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's a marketing term. Sometimes it's a specific term to actually describe what the cut is. And I want to hold up probably the antithesis or the anti-London broil. There's only one, like Terrace Major, right?
Yeah.
The meat scientists hold Terrace Major up as like the shining beacon. If we just call this by its Latin name,
everyone's going to know it.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. But I've got in front of me a list of some really confusing cuts. And, depending on where you happen to reside, you probably have a different idea of what this is. So, we talk about regionality. We talk about, man, if we could only all get on the same page with calling them the same thing. And this is just in beef, right? We haven't even started started talking about the fact that a Boston butt comes like from the front half of the animal on a pig, right? Very confusing stuff. But we're going to stick with beef today, and we're going to go ahead and play that. We're certified Angus beef. We've been here for 41, going on 42 years. We're going to go ahead and standardize this. So the words that are about to come out of Diana Clark and Tony Bigg's mouth, I'd like that to be officially written down as the beef gospel, right? And so we're all going to be singing the same song.
You mean Pikes Peak is not a ski area in Western New York?
He was I thought he was an explorer, but apparently he's also a piece of meat. I had no idea. Right. All right. So the first one, we've already hit the London broil, and I'd love to talk more about it, but you can tell I'm starting to get a little triggered here, right? I get fired up about the London broil, right? Delmonico. Delmonico steaks. I've seen it as a rib. I've seen it as a strip. I've seen it as a rib with the spinalis removed. Yeah. What the heck is a Delmonico?
And so, from what I understand, is it's the front end of that rib. So that's what I was trained. When you have a Delmonico, it's the front end of the rib. So you're getting closer to the chuck. You have a larger spinalis, a larger complexus. It's the premium steak to a meat connoisseur. Okay, but definitely have seen it in other areas. There was a restaurant, I believe, that kind of stopped.
Yeah, like back in the 30s in New York City when it was the heyday, Delmonico's was probably one of the premier steakhouses, first of its kind, number one, and the best of its kind. And so they would take, those cuts and just reserve them for their special customers because they were so tender, like we've talked about, in between the chuck and the rib. Mm-hmm. And you can only get like 3 or 4 steaks out of that. And they would save that from, the primal, and that would be their specialty. That would be their specialty. It would cost a little bit more on the menu, but they were known for that. So that's kind of like the original Delmonico.
I love that too, and I don't know why. I think people just see Delmonico and know that it's kind of that special cut. So people will randomly put it on there as a Delmonico to attract interest to it. And you're not describing the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay? If they really want it to be, they should just say a chuck and ribeye is kind of be or you could have a chuck Delmonico, which is your chuck eye steaks.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So group consensus, can we all say that when you see the word Delmonico, we're talking about the front end of the rib.
Yeah.
And if you see a chuck eye Delmonico, it's a chuck eye steak. You guys can get on
board
with that?
Hands up.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
All listeners out there, if you could help us deliver this message, I don't want to see Delmonico on a strip steak anymore.
Please,
right?
no.
And Delmonico has nothing to do with bone-on, boneless.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. There, and I know that's a touchy one. People will fight you over that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is next one. This is a pretty hot cut right now. The bavette, right?
Oh, yes.
Tell me about the bavette.
Bavette sirloin flap, right there. I mean, it's a sirloin flap steak. You cut it kind of towards the center of it with the grain, and then have those leading slices without a doubt. You agree?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's really found in these. In Canada mostly, and it's very popular there, and in France. And I think the bavette means flank steak. So, but it's not the flank steak. It's that sirloin flap, that center cut, that higher portion, and it's amazing. So, yeah. So, do we all agree on that one?
I think so.
Yeah. And can we also say that bavette is probably at the point where it can start to stand on its own. For a long time, it was talked about as an alternative to an outside skirt. But I mean, it kind of deserves its own top billing, right?
Oh, I agree. I think Greg Garbo might be a little bit upset that we're talking about it right now.
He is. I told him I was doing this next week for a presentation. He goes, "Why can't you pick another cut?" I mean, okay, we can, but I don't think Greg knows about it, but the world doesn't know about it.
I know,
right?
I know. He's a believer.
That's right. Sirloin flap. All right, you ready for this one? This one will really get people riled up, right? Kansas City strip versus a New York strip.
Oh God.
What is there a difference? What's the difference? Is it about regional pride? Is there a bone involved? Is there not a bone involved? Set the record straight.
You take it first.
Okay, you know what? What's a record straight? I mean, let's talk about it. It is a bone-in strip, correct? It's a bone-in strip steak. But Kansas City, they've taken claim on a bone-in strip. So what's the difference between a New York strip and a bone-in strip,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love the bone with, if you're going to call it the Kansas City cut, Kansas City strip steak, I love the bone.
Yeah.
We have done that. We've actually done a baseball bone-in strip steak, which is, you created and we cooked it.
It's
and
phenomenal.
It was phenomenal. But what is the difference? That is the question. So maybe even I don't even know the difference, okay? All I know is I love strip, bone in, bone out, and you could call it Cohasset bone-in strip. I don't know.
That's it. I think the same thing. I think Kansas City usually refers to that bone-in strip steak, and then your New York is your boneless. But I've definitely seen it go both ways, kind of depending on where you fall in the United States. But I feel like that would be a safe bet. An even safer bet would just say strip steak.
Right.
Take away the New York and the KC.
Why does geography even have to come into play here?
I think
right?
we eat it globally.
That's right. And we can all get on board with that.
Yeah.
You know, I've always noticed it's almost falls on the where the Mississippi River runs. You know, it's very more common if you go west of the Mississippi. It's hard to find a New York strip on certain menus unless you get to some of the larger metropolitan areas. But out there, it's like everything's, if it's a strip, it's a KC strip all day long.
Yeah.
You know, and here's the deal. You know, New York has laid claim to a style of pizza. Kansas City has laid claim to a style of barbecue. I can't really say that either of them are being greedy here. How about y'all both just let go of
I
this?
agree with that
Right.
one.
Totally
Yes.
agree.
Call it,
Yes.
right? So we can agree, call it a strip steak and be done with it?
Yes.
Yeah, done deal.
There you go. All right. This one has come up a couple times in conversation in other episodes that we've gone. It's a unique cut. Actually comes, I believe it comes out of the chuck roll. Tell me about the Sierra steak.
Oh, the Sierra, that's a great cut. So, again, that Beef Innovations group, they got together, they created some different names. They thought of names that would resonate well with people. I don't know where the Sierra part came from. They're very intelligent people that were working on this. It might have just been something that they thought was great, but to me, it looks like a flank, and it's from the chuck.
Right.
Let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
Chuck
I
flank,
think
right?
they created this in the Sierra Mountains, right? I mean, it could have been like
That's what I feel like. There needs to be a story
gotta
involved
be
with Sierra steak,
exactly,
but
right?
I haven't
like
heard
flat
anything.
iron. Like where?
Yeah,
Tell me, flat iron.
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has nothing, right? So we can agree, right? And then we're going to keep going. There's a few more here like that. Anytime you bring regionality into beef cuts, it's going to be a miss. Beef cuts should be described by more what they are, right?
Yeah, and I think the best way to go about naming steaks, if you are going to have kind of a newer cut, quote unquote newer cut, is to actually take a poll from consumers and see what resonates best with them, and then name it.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise you're just going to call it something that no one understands or feels the same way about, and so if they don't get it, they're not going to purchase it if they have no idea what it is.
One of our partners called me one day and they said, "You know what? I want to put a Claude Hart steak on the menu. I want to rename this. Tell me." And I gave him 50 names, and then all of a sudden I said, "Call it God's Heart." Now, I didn't think that was bad, actually. I mean, to me, right? But I didn't realize it offended him. So you got to be careful when you're naming these names.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good name, actually.
And
the Claude Hart steak.
That's the other part with it. A lot of chefs will get very caught up in the name. To me, the description is more important than anything because they won't know these names all the time. But if you're describing the steak as how you want it to be perceived, that's the goal. Because, I mean, the Sierra steak is the spleeniest. It's not a great name for a cut either, even though the Latin term is more descriptive, but still. So you got to just think about that, too, is that description.
Right, but you could do a Sierra cut roulade, right?
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah.
Why not?
That sings nice, right?
Oh, yeah.
Although Chuck Flank, I can get on board with Chuck Flank all day long, right?
Right.
You know exactly, right? You can picture it in your mind.
All about Chuck,
right?
right?
Sticking in the vein of regionality or regionally cut, named cuts, the Denver steak, right? This is one, it's probably approaching that point like the tri-tip. I think most people have heard of it. Most people probably actually know what it is. But why is it called a Denver steak?
Again, this is one of those that I really don't know. Beef Innovations Group, that Sierra, Denver, and then Santa Fe. There's just part of me thinks that there was this giant map, and they just took these darts and threw it at it. And I mean, that's the way we come up with our dogs' names sometimes, is we flip through an atlas and point, and whatever it is, that's what we're going to go with. But I don't know if that's the greatest idea when it comes to naming steaks.
Yeah, amen, right? John Denver was not involved in this whole process either, right? Right, but to be clear, in case you are on the outlier sitting in your car saying, I don't know what the Denver is, right? It's a chuck flap. It's the serratus ventralis, right? It's the short rib muscle, continuation of, but unlike, well, I guess you can grill a bone-in short rib, right? If you do it like a galbi style,
Yeah,
right?
maybe sous vide it too.
Yeah,
Sous vide.
but it's so packed with marbling.
It's delicious.
Yeah, actually, that's what we served Andrew Zimmern on Bizarre Foods when he was here. This is back in like 2013 when Denver steaks were just coming out.
That's awesome.
It was like a dry aged Denver, and it just it ate so well.
Oh, it's incredible.
So tasty.
It's short rib flavor in a steak bite.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
My first Denver steak, I will say, actually came just outside of Denver, right? But I was in Boulder at Black Belly, Hosea Rosenberg's place, and
It was good.
there's a reason it's caught on. There's real substance there. Continuing on this, the Vegas strip.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Vegas strips. What? It's not a strip steak. It's not from the short loin.
No.
So it's not a strip, and clearly Vegas doesn't really say much. Tell me about the Vegas strip.
So the Vegas sits on top of, well, if you're in the animal, underneath the underblade or the blade bone itself, and that is that cutting process to remove it from the animal is actually patented. So that's why it's really not super popular. But it's very similar in location to your flat iron. Looks a lot like a flat iron, eats a lot like a flat iron. I really am hoping someday that patent is removed, so it is available for many people. However, right now, we just have to live with it.
Yeah.
But if you buy a chuck roll, a lot of times it's found on the back of the chuck roll.
Yeah.
So just saying that there's that option.
Yeah. I will say it's not my favorite tasting cut. In
Can
that
be
you
a
have to
little
be
irony.
you have to be really careful with how you cook it like a flat iron, or it goes a little livery on you.
It does.
Yeah.
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 It's a good cut, though. And there's no cut that's bad, really,
Right.
when you think about it. It's certified Angus beef.
That's right. We're not talking about a garden here,
Yeah.
right? There are certain things that come out of the garden that I'm like, nope. All right. Moving on down the list, right? And clearly I've just like willy-nilly made a list of like, wonder what that is. Most of these I have no idea, so I'm actually asking you guys just out of genuine curiosity. Cap steaks.
Oh, yeah.
What is that? Yeah.
My guess, if someone said that to me, I would think they're talking about the culotte.
Yeah.
That would be my first guess. But that could be, there's a lot of caps.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it depends where you're from around the world,
Yeah.
right? I mean, as you know, and as we've dealt with, even our Latin American folks have different names for these cuts.
Yeah, that gets
so
hard.
the basis of this conversation is can we standardize these cuts worldwide? And that's why we're, I guess, talking about this today.
Yeah. Of course, in Latin America, it's La Picanha.
Correct.
Yeah, which
La picanha.
I think a lot of Americans recognize it as if you call it a culotte.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you go to resource in Oklahoma, it's an Oklahoma tri-tip. Right?
Which is so true. There's so many butchers that do that.
Yeah.
Because, it's got 3 points. It's but that's not the tri-tip.
It kind of looks like a tri-tip.
I get it.
I can get on board with the visual piece of that at
I
least.
get it. But, come on now.
Well, that would be a good thing we should do. Like put them together and have folks
show those differences.
Okay, what is this? What is this cut?
Yeah,
we should do that.
That is
next
a good
time.
idea.
Yeah, we should do that.
I've also seen La Picanha or La Culotte as a crown steak. Have you ever seen this before?
Yeah.
Crown steak.
Yeah. Yeah, which doesn't really describe it other than, but again, cap steak, you see the spinalis called the ribeye cap a lot. Now we're getting real confusing.
Right.
Because you're talking about a piece from the sirloin versus the greatest piece of meat on the entire...
I was talking about the
beef
spinalis last week, and they had no idea it went like this, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I had to explain, okay, you have to, it's a visual. You have to show them. Because spinalis, what is a spinalis, right? I mean, is that... Anyway, you have to show folks, okay, it's that beautiful top of the ribeye and the soft tissue when you roast a prime rib and you taste that soft, beautiful portion of that. That's the spinalis. But you remove that and you put that on the grill with olive oil and salt and pepper only. It is phenomenal, and it is such a different eating experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I posted today on Beef Maven was the spinalis, and
I missed it twice.
It's okay.
0 for 2. I'm kicking myself.
It was a hard one. But that people don't even think about removing it and cooking it separately.
Yeah.
You make it's a game changer.
Yeah. It is. It's one of those things I feel like that has always been present in culture, and people just didn't take a moment to realize the grandeur of it. It's like that little table. Well, it looks like a little 3-legged table that when you get a pizza in a pizza box, holds the box up, right? And supposedly it's also used to hold piece of right.
You get your butter, melted butter.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's always been there, right? And just nobody ever questioned it. Right. And so the spinalis, everybody's always been eating. And when they eat the ribeye steak, you just instinctively save that as like your last piece, right? Never thinking why, but you just know like that's the piece I want to finish with.
It's the caveman instinct.
I thought I loved filet mignon until I tasted the spinalis.
Oh, I know,
so
right?
That's my to-go-to now, along with the sirloin flap.
Yeah. So good. All right, this one's a little more mainstream. Certainly everybody knows the terms. Not sure everybody understands the differences. T-bone versus porterhouse.
Yeah, that's just the size of that fillet. So your T-bone has a smaller tenderloin on it. Your porterhouse has a larger one. Now you could get specific. I think the USDA is 1.25 inches in terms of width from the bone, but every food service distributor, cut house, they're going to have a different specification for what is their T-bone versus what is their porterhouse. So it kind of just depends on that process.
So even that's not standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very confusing. Okay, so let's talk about the drawback, right? I mean, the meathead in me, the guy who just loves to show up and eat lots of food, will always say, well, the porterhouse has more meat on it, right? But what's the drawback of a porterhouse?
You also possibly can get that vein end strip steak. You're definitely way more likely to get that. Usually you'll get one center cut porterhouse, maybe 2, if you're lucky, depending how thick you're cutting them too.
Yeah.
But I mean, not that the vein end's bad. I mean, you could definitely still eat around that connective tissue between the sirloin and the strip loin, but that's your only downside.
Yeah.
However, when Tony puts that family style, that giant porterhouse in the middle of a table, gosh.
Yeah, we've done that deconstructed where we remove the fillet and the strip from the bone. The bone always goes to Fido after, right, in the doggy bag. But then we cook those separately because they cook separate. They cook differently. So the tenderloin is going to cook faster than the strip loin, but we cook it at the same time. We slice it back on the bone. And for you chefs, this is a major, great presentation you should do in all your steakhouses. This is a wow factor.
Yeah.
And then you get both of your steaks cooked perfect.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I remember years ago, we got a phone call, and I don't even remember who made the call, but they were asking, actually, Chef Michael Ollier, what is the best way to cook a porterhouse? Do you cook the strip to temp, or do you cook the tenderloin to temp? And that became like the $1 million question. Like, well, we have some ideas. We can test this and try this. But, I mean, I guess the best way is just to take them off the bone and cook them to their ultimate. Yeah.
You still can cook and roast that bone, and you can still have it there for presentation.
But then you got people like my father who want that whole porterhouse. They want that, that 2.5, 3 inch porterhouse on the plate, and they can just dig in. They don't care if that tenderloin's well done or not. They don't really care. They just want to see that big piece of meat.
I'm guessing, too, a lot of people are sitting there thinking, well, but if you remove it from the bone, then the flavor's not going to be there.
But you can roast the bone, which we've done that before.
And the bone doesn't add any flavor to the meat.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that out there for everyone to ponder.
Right.
Okay?
You could roast it. You could probably add some aromatics to it.
Right.
Yeah, without question.
Yeah, but there's no flavor leaching from it. Yeah.
No, you still get that presentation when you have the bone there roasted. You can still nibble on it then later.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. The dog doesn't carry them.
My dogs love the porterhouse.
All right. We got a few more on the list, and then I certainly want to throw it out because you mentioned a Santa Fe that I want to chat with you about as well. The shoulder tender.
Yeah.
Is that a Terrace Major?
Yes, which is very confusing. So shoulder tender, petite chuck shoulder tender is another name for the Terrace Major. So a lot of people just shorten it for shoulder tender. However, you have the mock tender,
which is also in the shoulder.
Yeah.
And
it's also called the chuck tender. And shoulder and chuck basically mean the same thing. So you kind of got two names that are, Yeah, so like it's really confusing, and they're completely different.
Yeah, if you get a mock tender and you're expecting a Terrace Major,
You'd be pissed.
yeah.
I'm complaining.
I will tell you, there have been 2 applications of the mock tender that I have found like, all right, I can get on board with that. One was the mock tender that came off the entire side of beef that you put on a spit.
That was cool.
Which everything that came off of that thing was delicious.
It really was.
Yeah. What do you want for 14 hours?
I mean, that's so true.
In an open fire.
It was so good.
And the other good use of it, our pal Matt Mitro and David Chin, his chef on site at Flower up in Cleveland, he actually takes the mock tender and uses it in a ramen application.
Oh,
it's
that's
like
smart.
super thin, really good. But again, at the same time, I think he sous vide it as well. So but other than that, like, it ain't no Terrace Major.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And that's why we always say is if you're a sales rep out there, always ask what they're doing with it before you put the order in, because you got to know if they're, I'm grilling it, don't give them the mock tender. Mock tender is low and slow. Sous vide, low and slow. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's skip down to the last 2 here. The beef tech. Which I haven't seen a whole lot. I feel like I saw that term a whole lot more when I was younger.
Yeah, I I've heard this term many times in the Middle East. I've heard chefs use it as a steak tartare.
Okay.
And then I've seen it here, and I used to use it the butt end of the tenderloin. Okay, so the larger portion of the tenderloin, the beef tech. And then I've seen a Latin American where they actually take the tenderloin or a strip, they pound it out, parsley and garlic, and sear it real quick, and that's a beef stecca. But I've heard it also beef tech. So, what is it, right?
That's one that I don't. I would assume that it was the bistecca that just kind of got shortened down at some point, and that's just beef steak, so it could be really anything.
It's about as bland as you can be, right?
Yeah.
And again, when you go around the world and you talk to folks, and they're hearing stuff from other countries, they make up their own. So again, it's not standardized.
Yeah.
And so you're going, well, that's not what it is, but am I wrong?
Right.
I know. Then you start to question yourself on all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. All right. Last one on my list: the Pikes Peak roast.
That's a ski area, right? In Western New York.
It was right. All I know is Ferdinand Magellan did not get a steak named
at
after
one
him.
of our beautiful coffee places down the street.
That's what I think of. Pikes Peak.
What's a Pikes Peak roast?
I have absolutely no idea.
It's a braised item, I think. Right? I think it's from the shank, and it's good for braising. That's what I was reading. I think that's what it is. Yeah. Boneless.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to have to go back into the lab and
figure this one out.
Figure out how we're going to do this Pikes Peak again, right, with a coffee.
So if you are keeping score at home, Pikes Peak is thrown in there as well. Any cut of meat that's named after a region, we got to stop that nonsense, right? There's no winners. Even strip lovers, New York and Kansas City, get rid of it. Just call it a strip.
Yes.
But there's one out there you mentioned earlier, Santa Fe.
Santa Fe.
What's the Santa Fe?
It's the gracilis. So it's actually the top round cap. It is awesome.
Yeah.
It really. So it looks a lot like a skirt steak, but it's wider. You could split it in half. Oddly enough, I just ate it last night too. So oddly enough, the thinner part at the end is slightly tougher, and it's not super tough, but it's slightly tougher than the thicker part. You'd think it'd be the opposite.
Yeah.
But it is a great cut. I know Jeremy's played around with it every now and again, and he enjoys it too. To me, if you're buying in a top round to roast and shred or slice for sandwiches or something, get it with the cap on, remove that cap, and use that cap, because it is awesome.
It's delightful.
Yeah.
Glorious. What have I missed?
Well, I've heard Spencer before, but that's I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Why do they call it the tri-tip? I mean, I know there's 3 points, but whoever.
That's what I'd assume. Why they 1, 2, 3?
1, 2, 3.
Looks like a meat boomerang.
It does.
It really does.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in Australia, man.
Yeah. Our pal Jess Pryles actually was railing about the ambassador steak. Are you familiar with this?
No.
It's menued in certain places. It's a strip. Well, now you've just really confused everybody,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't get this.
I don't understand that, right? At all. If you are listening at home and you have more steaks that you're like, man, I wish they'd discuss this, shoot us an email. What's the millennial term? Slide into our DMs on the Instagram. It's @_meatspeak. Or hit us up at Beef Maven, Chef Tony Biggs, at Chef Bryan. Although I'm probably not. I'm going to go to one of these guys to find an answer anyway. Ask away, and we'll certainly tack it on to a future episode to answer those questions, because this is meant to go back and forth. The biggest takeaway, guys, we've all got to get singing from the same songbook, or people are just going to get really confused. And a confused customer is always going to go and get the dish that they're familiar with. It's chicken.
Chicken breast.
Yeah, it's chicken.
I've never heard anybody say, well, that's the great, you gotta go to this place. They got the best chicken breast I've ever had.
I know.
Right?
I know. No one says that.
No one says that.
I never hit on chicken too much because I love me some Nashville hot
I do too.
fried chicken.
I like
all
buffalo
day
style
long.
chicken wings.
I can get down on that all day long, right?
Yeah.
That said, we are beef people. If we can accomplish anything on this list, it's the London broil.
Yes.
Right? Please,
Let's
please,
do that.
please. I'm begging you. If you're a butcher, if you're in a retail shop, if you're a chef, we gotta get the London broil sorted out.
Yeah.
Right?
At least be specific with it. Top round London broil. Tell me what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's get down with it. Excellent. Chef Tony Biggs, Diana Clark, meat scientist, here on the Meat Speak podcast, powered by the Certified Angus beef brand. If this is your first time tuning in, please know you can find us across all of your major podcasting platforms, Google Play, Apple, Spotify, or simply by visiting certifiedangusbeef.com/podcast. Give us a follow on the gram. Please feel free to ask all the questions that you want. Tony Biggs said his Instagram has been blowing up lately.
It has.
Right?
Yeah, come on. Yeah, come on out to my region there. Yes. I mean, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tony Biggs is going to be bigger than
Someone
Miley
asked me
Cyrus.
for the recipe for the Biggs Burger, and I gave it to
Oh,
him.
nice.
Yeah, the Biggs Burger.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm going to go eat one right now. Guys, thank you for joining us here in studio. Those of you listening at home, be sure to go and check out season 1. It's all up there on the worldwide internet. So until next time, thanks for listening to Meat Speak podcast, powered by the Certified Angus Beef brand.